is Monday, April 1st, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And no, that is not an April Fool's joke, but I'm sure there are a few of you who have enjoyed an April Fool's joke or two today on at least your social media. I know I have. Anyway, so it was a very, how should I say this? What's the right adjective for that? I'll just go with educational, because it certainly was. Educational. Get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Monday. And we were covering guard pulls. And you know what's funny about it is, I really appreciated the way that the instructor started off the class, because the first thing he did was like go through and tell you basically, or tell us that, you know, while guard pulling may not have the greatest reputation in the world, there is a time and a place for it. It's not necessarily in a self-defense situation, and it's not necessarily something that you're always going to use. But in an instance where maybe you're in competition and maybe you're having a lot of trouble, as in like too much trouble, it's proving completely impossible to take down your opponent, pull guard. What else are you gonna do, man? I mean, you're gonna stand up and wait for him to throw you down, and initiate the conversation on the ground according to his terms? I don't think so, kid. You definitely, if you're not feeling the ability to throw him, I don't see anything wrong with going for a guard pull. It's certainly a bad habit of mine. Although I will say this, that I've always had really good balance, and I've always had really good a good stable foundation. You know, it's like knocking me over is not exactly the easiest thing to do. You know, and staying on my feet is something I'm kind of geared to doing in my mind. You know, and so for me, I've been wanting to really enhance my stand-up game, because I think that I've got enough strength and enough noodle between my ears that if I know, you know, basically where to grab, how to grab, those kind of things, if I can get down the process, that I know that I could be one of those type of people that, you know, you lay a hand on me and like all of a sudden you're in the mid-air and crashing, either because I'm throwing you at the ground or because I've just removed you off of your feet, one of the two. Point being that I feel like I've got that capability. You know, I've done it before. It was funny, I rolled with this one guy, Jorge, a long time ago, and I'll never forget it, because it was actually my first real double leg takedown. You know, not one of those where I'm like grabbing him around the ankles or shit, but I mean like literally I batted his hands, you know, and then I grabbed him around his thighs and like lifted him up off the ground and then put him on his side. And I mean there was like no way for him to, you know, get me into his guard or something like that. And I think I kind of took him by surprise, because I literally heard a you know, I mean, like he really got it in the gut when I came in on him. But it was funny because he's like, you know, just take it easy and just go with what feels right, you know, because I was trying to work on my standing game. And so he had his hands kind of out in front of him, and we had just gone over this in class, to come in with your palms facing out and bat the hands out away from the body, and just enough to where you can like get your arms in between their arms and their body. And so that's exactly what I did, man. And it's like all of the instructions, it was just like somebody hit play and the instructions from the class or whatever just like went through my mind. It was like, okay, plant the first foot in between their feet, you know, and then bat the hands down, aim for the hips with the hands, slide past the hips with the hands, you know, go down to the knee, lift, and then crash. And it was. I mean, that wasn't exactly the same series, because I remember that I was actually still on my feet when I got him up off of his. So I know that if I did touch ground with the knee, it was just temporary. But it was like a by the book double leg takedown. Anyway, so we were going through stuff for guard takes today, and that, like I said, that was like my first effort to try and get my game more standing, or at least enhance my standing game. And I still feel like that's a part of people's game that we really don't spend a whole lot of time working. I mean, because there's so much to be going on afterward, right? And it's not exactly the focus of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is more aligned with being concerned about what happens after you've actually gotten the takedown, and you're in a scramble with your opponent to get a dominant position, or in fact to put them away. And so I think it's kind of endemic in a lot of jiu-jitsu, where people just focus like primarily on the ground game, and not enough on the standing portion of the game. And I've said this before, that I think that's kind of unfortunate, because ultimately, while 90% of all fights will end up on the ground, 100% of them almost start while you're still standing. So, I shouldn't say 100%, I would say 95%. But the point being is, chances are you're standing initially, and so you definitely want to work that aspect of your game, because then the most important transition for you is going from the standing to the on the ground, to your ground game. And so, that's really where the power is going to come from. I mean, if you throw somebody on the ground hard enough, you are going to stun them, and that's going to give you 0.5 seconds to get the fuck on top of them, or I should say an additional 0.5 seconds to get on top of them and really assert a dominant position. And so, of course, you don't want to waste that time. And so that's one of the reasons why I really go for efficiency when it comes to a takedown. Closest thing to me, right? If the guy's standing with one leg forward, that leg is the closest to me. If he's got an arm extended out past his toe, that is the closest to me. And so it's like that, given the angle and what's presented, that's what I try and base my priorities on, as far as utilization and taking down my opponent, or trying to put them away. I did get a submission today. That was cool. I mean, I kind of had to work for it. He's a very strong guy. But nonetheless, it was there, and I acquired it. And I do try and follow that thing where you're not really forcing it on your opponent really hard, because, again, this isn't competition, and this isn't an event on the street. No, this is in class, and we're trying to learn. And so the less we're injured, the more we learn, because we get to stay on the mat as opposed to being off on the sidelines. But yeah, like I said, I got one good submission today. I did not get submitted today, although I did end up in compromised positions that we had to reset, because, of course, I did not keep my opponent from passing my guard. I think it was passing guard. Yeah, it was passing guard. Anyway, nonetheless, it was a lot of fun. I do like passing. Not passing, but pulling guard. But I would like to make it less of my game, and so that really has been less of my game as far as what I actually focus on. And we did this one. I want to say it's a bullfight pass. It's kind of a smashy kind of pass where you take your hands and you grab the legs of their pants and you force them down towards the ground, and then you roll your shoulder past their knee and kind of slide down their thigh towards their hips, and then roll into it and flip your legs over them, and then you've got them completely pinned, got them in a nice top position. And I I should have done that as far as like the pass approach type that I did, but unfortunately I did not. Anyway, enough of that business. It was a good roll. I'm definitely looking forward to the week. But as far as what we're going to get into today, I got a couple different paths I may go down. So we'll figure it out, or I'll figure it out during the music break, and we'll go from there. As far as music goes, I don't know. I'm liking this song. It's Between the Buried and Me, but of course I don't know the title of the song, so I'm not going to play it. I usually like to do stuff with the titles and the content of the songs as far as the subject matter. And so if I don't have a title, man, I don't know where to go with it. Anyway, it's dope. I Survive. That's a good one. I like this song. So here it is. Dope. Survive. First Dance. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Death Angel with Bored. I'll tell you what, man, that was the first song that I'd ever heard by them, and I was just so blown away by their style. And people take for granted that song and that whole album, really, as far as a lot of people don't really consider exactly when it was made. I mean, that album was made, I think, 1989 or 1988. But it's a fantastic album, and it still runs with what we've got today. You know, I mean, when you listen to stuff on the radio, or even stuff that you hear on like Spotify or on Pandora, you'll hear stuff on there that's, you know, I mean, you'll hear Death Angel in your mix. And it, like I said, it's on par with bands that were released last year, that were releasing albums last year, or, you know, the year before that. But point being, it's very timely. You know, I mean, it's if you listen to that song and you really listen to the lyrics, you know what it reminds me of is day trading cryptocurrencies. Not enough, yet too much time. I'm bored. Anyway, as usual, I had a planned path, but I don't know, I'm tempted. I went back to my Twitter feed, and it dealt me up something really juicy and really, really current. But I did want to step back and do something not so current today, but pretty timely. I mean, pretty current, but just not today. Anyway, I want to start with this one because I've talked about this organization before, and how I feel that between them and Bitfinex and Tether, and there's another organization in there somewhere, I can't remember the name of them, but they're all tied up in having been hacked and or been accused of circulating fraudulent funds. You know, in the case of Bitfinex, I think their Tether volumes or whatever kind of suspect. And there's been plenty of accusations of fraud there, and they had been hacked. They had multiple serious hacks. One of them, while you were still able to trade there if you were a U.S. citizen, before the gulag decided that wasn't such a good idea for you. Anyway, I had an account there, and the way that they repaired us the first time was that they issued the BFX token, and I don't know whether or not that still trades on there. But anyway, it was profitable for me in the longer term to just hold on to the BFX token, because it did appreciate over time. And I did walk away profitable, but nonetheless, that was the way that they repaired us the first time. You know, made us whole, gave us our funds back. But Bithumb, they were hacked for like 20 million or something to that effect, And like I said, they are tied up with Tether, and there's another organization in there, and it's escaping me what their name was or what the organization is. But the point being is these have all been, hacked or had some serious accusations of fraudulent behavior, lack of accountability, that kind of stuff. And so whenever I hear about one of these organizations having some sort of trouble, I think it's all tied into these events, that maybe at one point or another there was a legitimate hack, or they just spent too much money on boats and hoes. One of the two. We don't know. We shouldn't be put in the position of having to trust them to begin with, but we are. Or at least some of us are. And so here it is. BitThumb hacked again. Hackers reportedly steal $15 million in EOS. And this was authored March 30th, 2019. This is on an aggregator site, so I want to make sure that this was the original site of the story. Let's see here. Let me see. Looking. Oh, okay. Yeah, here it is. They ripped it from the Bitcoinist. I do my best to give proper attribution to any kind of stuff that's authored, especially about crypto stuff, because a lot of times it's women. And that's something I notice, is that female authors will get their stuff aggregated and there won't be proper attribution on it. And I find that kind of offensive, honestly. So, like I said, I do my best to hunt down the original source of it so I can give proper attribution. Anyway, this is on the Bitcoinist.com. BitThumb hacked again. Hackers reportedly steal $15 million in EOS, and this was authored by Osada Avon Nameo. My apologies if I mispronounced that. Let's do a little check here. See if we can find something out really quick, and I'm not seeing what I want to see. Just all the stuff this person has authored. So, let's see. Third dispenser. I'm looking to see if I can find out an indication of whether or not this person has a penis or not. Osato, I'm going to go with yes, penis. If that's incorrect, my apologies, ma'am. Whatever. This is authored March 30th, 2019 at 5:30. No indication of AM or PM, or, well, I don't know. It says 0530, so I'm going to say AM, and no indication of time zone, so we have no idea where this person authored this. Continuing. The rundown. BitThumb admits suspicious activity. Another BitThumb hack? Inside job. BitThumb admits suspicious activity. In a notice published on the company's website on Saturday, March 30th, 2019, BitThumb apologized to its users for inconveniences suffered on account of its decision to temporarily suspend deposit and withdrawal services on the platform. According to the statement, the move was a precautionary step following the detection of unusual cryptocurrency withdrawals from its cold wallet storage. That should be like virtually impossible, dude, if it's really cold storage. BitThumb also said it was collaborating with other platforms to trace and recover the stolen funds. An excerpt from the statement reads, quote, "Our members' KRW deposit/withdrawal services normally available, and we do our best to secure the stability of the service and to resume as soon as possible. Specific resumption schedule will be announced through a separate announcement." Another BitThumb hack. The BitThumb statement comes almost 24 hours after reports first emerged on Twitter of another BitThumb hack. According to Devin Wan, suspected hackers gained control of the private key for BitThumb's EOS account. Gosh, I wonder how they got that. The entire timeline as below. HT blah blah blah. Hacker account IFGUZ 3CHMAMG was created via account create, and that was on March 29th, 9:40 a.m. and then 3:29 to 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. BitThumb wallet G4 Dom Rex whatever has been transferred out 3,132,672 EOS to the hacker account in a total of 16 transactions. Wow. The hackers were reportedly able to steal more than 3 million EOS tokens, worth about $15 million. Whale Alert, a Twitter handle that tracks large cryptocurrency transactions, also reported the same transaction from BitThumb to an unknown wallet. Let's see. And that was the 13 million US dollars transferred to BitThumb to unknown wallet. And it gives you a little URL for Whale Alert. Following the alleged hack, these suspected hackers have since moved the funds to other platforms like Huobi, HitBTC, and KuCoin. At press time, none of the other platforms involved in the matter have released any statement. Quote, "Yep, that's definitely the transaction from Whale Alert, so we can absolutely confirm that BitThumb has known about this for 17 hours and counting without so much as a peep." And that was a shout out. What's this? Hold on a second. Got a notification. Yes. Sorry, somebody in Discord did a alert of some sort. And so I had to check and verify exactly what it's all about. Anyway, continuing. If reports of the attack turn out to be true, it will be the second hack suffered by BitThumb in less than 9 months. Back in June 2018, hackers stole $31.5 million, but did manage to recover about 45% of the stolen funds less than a fortnight later. A potentially troubling aspect of this story so far is the report that the attack might have been an inside job. BitThumb's statement even points to this possibility, saying, quote, "As a result of the inspection, it is judged that the incident is an accident involving insiders because the external intrusion path has not been revealed until now. Based on these facts, we are conducting intensive investigations with KISA, Cyber Police Agency, and security companies." I'll give you my. Let's see. Do you think the alleged was an inside job? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will say right off the bat that I would be willing to bet that somebody at Microsoft hacked them. I know I keep saying something to that effect, but it's, let's see, maybe a bad time while you're on show, blah, blah, blah. I want your opinion on laws. Yeah. Not right now, dude. Let me type that in. Anywho, so my thoughts are that Microsoft acquired GitHub, and so any of the information that's shared with GitHub is essentially being shared with Microsoft. And Microsoft has kind of a conflict of interest, I believe, because they are involved themselves in several platform projects as well as quote-unquote blockchain projects and investment in cryptocurrencies in general. So, like I said, I think it might be kind of a conflict of interest for them to have that level of access to multiple coins, multiple exchanges, multiple apps, all of their source code. So I mean, crafting a way to get into the accounts, half of the work is already done. It's just a matter of deploying the software then. I mean, because they already own the repository for it. So they just, take a file out and put a different file in. Nobody knows the difference because it does the same exact thing on the surface. But yet there were modified aspects of the code that do certain things, such as this. Maybe like, I don't know. I couldn't speculate. But the point being that I think that is a big point of intrusion. Let's see what some of the comments here. Dino Park says, that hack, really awful example of what can happen with crypto. So now I really start to worry about how it's going to be with Poloniex. They have got so many maintenance. You know what, Dino? You can take that one of two ways. Number one, they're getting attacked so much that it's absolutely necessary for them to be down for maintenance. Or number two, that they're being kind of proactive in that they're detecting new attack types and they're being proactive about countermeasures. You never know. It could be a mix of both. It really depends on how up on their shit they really are. In Poloniex, I think that they would be they'd be a little bit more ardent these days about staying on top of their security because they are no longer in the original hands. And so a different company is liable for any kind of issues that occur with regard to that exchange. And, there are parties that are much more concerned about their own reputations. And so, yeah. But then again, you do have to worry about exactly what that means to some organizations. It seems that there are plenty of organizations out there in the finance world that they really abuse the trust that they're given. And it's sad, but the fact of the matter is that that's why we're even here. Is because some people really abused our trust. And it was necessary to quote-unquote bail them out, and a lot of them did get bailed out. But that's one thing about crypto. Nobody's bailing out BitThumb. Not willingly or knowingly. And if they are, they're asking for a chunk of BitThumb's ass in the exchange. They're like, yeah, we want like 25% of your quarterly profits, bud. Until you're paid off with us. And that's kind of what happened with Poloniex, where they just got slowly bought out. At the end, the people that started Poloniex owned about 40% of Poloniex. They'd sold off the rest due to hacks and credit issues and so on and so forth. But the point of the matter is that there was only 40% of the ground left under their feet when they walked. Anywho, I wanted to shift gears, and I've been kind of noticing some stuff, and I've predicted this for quite some time now, actually. And so I want to start off with a symptom, and then onto an explanation or two that may be plausible. Now, whether or not they are the total explanation, that is yet to be seen. Anyway, here it is, and this one again is on the Bitcoin news, so let me check and verify that this didn't come from somewhere else. Yeah, here we go. Wow. So this is on Bitcoin.com apparently. More than 30% of BTC traffic stems from the Veriblock project. Over the past few weeks, a blockchain project called Veriblock, whose protocol piggybacks off of Bitcoin Core network, has sparked debate. More than a quarter of Bitcoin's transaction numbers stem from the Veriblock system, and the project has been criticized for using the blockchain in this manner. Veriblock chain is paying for a lot of BTC block space. Most people are unaware that about a quarter of BTC's chain's daily transactions are due to another project called Veriblock. Veriblock chain utilizes a system called proof of proof, and the proof stems from the security of the BTC chain. Essentially, Veriblock aims to provide alternative blockchain security by immersing a snapshot of the altcoin's ledger into the Bitcoin into the BTC chain. They specify it on this, so I'm going to. Veriblock uses op-return transactions and other methods to embed the blockchain's state data in the SP blockchain transaction. Last month, BTC developer and Casa CTO, Jameson Lopp, noticed that Veriblock was dominating the number of BTC-based op-return transactions. Quote, source of the now highest volume of op_return outputs has been identified as Veriblock's, quote, proof-of-proof miners, explained Lopp. They are creating around 20% of all of BTC transactions now. According to statistics published this week, Veriblock captures more than 30 to 45% of transactions on a good day. The project is still in testnet mode and has only recently caught the attention of cryptocurrency enthusiasts. A few other BTC community members have called the project, quote, garbage, and complained about Veriblock spamming the network. As usual, there were various subjective valuations on whether or not some transaction use cases are spam. Most people understand, though, that the network is permissionless by nature, and it really doesn't matter as long as users pay for the block space. Veriblock believes other blockchains will be enticed by the POP system because it gives them the ability to leverage Bitcoin's security and reputation. Quote, as a result, the reinforced security provided by POP will encourage further adoption of these alternative blockchains. Veriblock's website details, quote, the transition of transactions from Bitcoin to alternative blockchains will also facilitate Bitcoin scaling, while continuing to drive value back to Bitcoin miners. Maybe, maybe not. Piggyback projects believe the well-established first layer adds more security to the second chain. Not really, but continuing. Because Veriblock piggybacks off of BTC's security, the project can offer this safety net to alternative networks. Veriblock's site says it enables early attack detection, protection against sustained 51% attacks, and double spend attack prevention. Veriblock is operated by CTO Maxwell Sanchez and CEO Justin Fisher, and backed by former Bitcoin developer Jeff Garzik, who acts as technical advisor. Veriblock is not the only project using the BTC chain for leverage, as there have been other networks using the chain in a variety of ways. OmniLayer, the network that issues the stablecoin Tether, uses op_return transactions. Counterparty used a process called proof of burn, and other projects like Namecoin use merge mining. Another project using merge mining is the RSK network, and the protocol is currently capturing about 45% of BTC's network hash rate. Some BTC proponents dislike the merge mining process, as well as other types of sidechain projects like DriveChain, because a few crypto community members are extremely paranoid about giving miners too much power. Dude, they're the fucking network! They have the power to determine what exactly they want to run on their miners. Get over it. Veriblock is just another example of a chain using BTC's established blockchain in order to add more value to what it produces. And because the cryptocurrency's network is permissionless, people's opinion on certain projects being quote-unquote spam or inefficient is little more than internet chatter. What do you think about the Veriblock chain using 30 to 45% of BTC transactions? Let us know about this, what you think of the subject in the comments below. Let's see what the comments are on this one. let's see, Bitspace Coin says, actually the Komodo project, KMD, has been doing the same thing with their delayed POW protocol for much longer. Only difference is, they don't need as many transactions to achieve their security, so you hardly notice the impact of Komodo on the BTC blockchain. Let's see, Yaman Thompson says 30% of all transactions. It really is a lot. Explains a lot of the criticism. Yep. SMD says, this means Bitcoin developers lack imagination to link high hash rate to high transaction volume. Therefore, Veriblock is filling their vacuum. That's kind of astute. Luke Sr. says, the objection to sidechains is not because of paranoid opinions, but because of violation of law of conservation of energy. It is like riding a bicycle with a fan powered by a sidechain, or a subchain, linked to the hard work of the legs, but claiming the fan steals no power from the biking main chain. Yeah. Jonathan Silverblood says, or the problem could be that the self-imposed blockchain limitation is itself violating fundamentals, and these external systems are merely restoring balance? No, not really. Luke Sr., the topic has nothing to do with block size bullshit. A sidechain of a big block cryptocurrency is also wrong. Yeah, I would agree with that. But it does have everything to do with Blockspace. You know, if there were enough block space to be fitting all of the transactions into, there wouldn't be all these bullshit projects. It would be, how do I implement Bitcoin directly into my payments? Not, how do I get a service provider to establish my payment sidechain and maintain it for me? Give me a fucking break, man. Like I said, this has been artificially created. It's artificially created by the block size limit. And I mean, while I do see some utility for these kind of projects, like as something that you run for yourself, right? You know, as opposed to, again, a third-party arbiter running it for you. Maybe it's something like a Microsoft suite or something like that, where you can manage your transaction volume and your transaction receiving and sending all in one kind of thing, other than like a wallet. You could do that with most wallets. Not necessarily a paper wallet, or what we would really consider a quote-unquote cold storage wallet, i.e. a paper wallet. But yeah, just a regular SPV wallet. You know, zero conf, it works. Believe it or not. Anyway, but yeah, so I got another article, and this is kind of an explanation of it. So ccn.com, no attribute. Oh, this is by PH Midori. Midor. Check it out. Blah 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 blah. Is currently playing. Blah 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 blah. To blah blah blah. Okay, so his penis. By ccn.com, the average Bitcoin payment surged to new record. Here's the real trigger. By ccn.com, the average transactions per Bitcoin block have gone to its all-time high in the past few days, and many people are attributing the rise in operations to a company called Veriblock. Veriblock is said to be creating as many as 20% of the total transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain at this time. And this is authored March 29th, 2019. So, that's kind of weird. Because we were hearing that it was much more than that. Anyway, Veriblock proof of span. According to blockchain.info, the current transaction rate is at its all-time high. The actual highest transactions ever recorded in a single day was back in December of 2017, when, according to BitInfo charts, the transactions exceeded 420,000 in a single day. Veriblock went live a few days ago, and according to its Block Explorer, it currently represents almost 19% of the total Bitcoin transactions. People were already concerned about it when it was still in its testing phases. If there were enough demand for Veriblock services, it could push up to 80% of all Bitcoin transactions? Or could it push up to 80%? I would say yes, if there was enough demand for it. What is Veriblock? It's similar to Komodo in that it enables alternative blockchains to leverage the hash power of the Bitcoin blockchain for security. The Komodo platform, however, requires fewer transactions to work out its delayed proof-of-work scheme. Veriblock calls their concept proof of proof and describes itself as such. POP mining enables blockchains to inherit and leverage the proof of work from a superior blockchain such as Bitcoin. As a result, the reinforced security provided by POP will encourage further adoption of these alternative blockchains. Some people feel Veriblock is little more than blockchain spam, but it's certainly not the type of spam that you want to complain about if you're a miner. Blocks are full of fee-paying transactions as a result of Veriblock. The current fee rate on Bitcoin is about 10,000 satoshis per kilobyte. It's been a lot higher than that in times past. Prepare to return to massive on-chain Bitcoin fees. I actually saw one the other day that was about $60. I don't know if that was somebody intentionally overpaying or somebody getting ass raped. Not entirely sure. Continuing on. If the Bitcoin price happens to break out while Veriblock is still using a large amount of block space, we can expect fees to skyrocket. For Veriblock to remain a reliable service, it will be paying these higher fees. The expected upcoming/impending bull run will likely propel some businesses to adopt Lightning Network as a way to save money, but will users follow? This is an open question that will be determined by the actual usage of payment channels in the coming months and years. Certainly alternative models of scaling, such as increased block size, will have their day in court of meritocracy. Ultimately, the more second-layer applications built on Bitcoin, the more valuable the minimal real estate of 1 megabyte blocks will become. Fuck, how long have I been saying that? I've been saying that for like 3, maybe even 4 years. That the whole intent of Lightning Network was to make Bitcoin's block space the most expensive real estate on planet Earth. And that's literally what they're working towards. Anyway, continuing on. And they even put it in terms of real estate here. Listen, ultimately, the more second-layer applications built on Bitcoin, the more valuable the minimal real estate of 1 megabyte blocks will become. These motherfuckers are parroting me, whether they know it or not. Lightning Network transactions eventually find their way onto the main chain in the form of channels opening and closing. Proof of proof and other services developed by Veriblock take up space, and then thousands of companies have uses for Bitcoin block space. Will the small block stalwarts be pushed into reopening the block size debate? History shows that no matter the number of unconfirmed transactions will sway them. However, if Lightning Network is fully put to work and blocks are still crowded, the question is bound to pop up again. Yeah, okay. Well, and let's get to that. There's supposedly thousands of nodes out there owned by little people like you and me. And what are they going to be saying when they can no longer afford to establish their own payment channels because the block space is too fucking expensive? What are they going to be saying then? Oh shit, maybe he wasn't crazy. It's probably what they'll say. Anyway, let's get into some of the comments on here. Swilder says, there are better systems that do the same thing as Veriblock, but in a sustainable and efficient way. Komodo's platform's DPOW is one of those solutions, and it's been operational for 2 years. Yep. Nelson Wells says, quote, the more second-layer applications built on Bitcoin, the more valuable the minimal real estate of 1 megabyte will become. Lightning Network transactions eventually find their way into the main chain in the form of Lightning channels opening and closing. Proof of proof and other services developed by Veriblock will take up space, and then thousands of companies have uses for Bitcoin space. Will small blocks... Anyone want to tackle that one? Yeah, I already have, dude. And it's really obvious where it's going. You know, I mean, really, you have to like not be aware of exactly what Bitcoin does and how it does it to really understand that end of the debate, and why basically the small block stalwarts. You know, at this point, I really want to just blame the miners, because it is them mining the blocks. It's their responsibility to ensure that Bitcoin is viable for us to use as a digital cash system. If it can no longer fulfill that need, people will take their interest elsewhere and will utilize cryptocurrencies that can fulfill that need. It's very, very simple. You know, we figured it out in January, where we saw this massive increase in interest in altcoins because people tried to transact on Bitcoin's network and found out it was way too fucking expensive, and it was a big pain in the ass for them to try and do it cheaply or in a quote-unquote safer method. And so they're like, okay, well, you know, do I really need to transact in Bitcoin, or can I use another cryptocurrency instead? And that's exactly what's going to fucking happen again. That between the institutional interest and these organizations such as Veriblock occupying Blockspace, that the average user, the average person that started in Bitcoin, you know, 5-6 years ago, is basically going to be blocked out of using Lightning Network or even on-chain transactions and doing Bitcoin transactions. But when that happens, there will go the interest. The only people that will be using it will again be the legacy bank interests and whatnot. And they're going to, of course, just like Coinbase, abuse that position and charge you an arm and a fucking leg to be able to get in and out of fiat systems, even though it doesn't cost them jack shit to do it. And this is the thing that I think a lot of these centrally minded people are really missing, is that in the not so distant future, you aren't going to be able to endure that $30 fucking transaction fee from Coinbase. That is going to be a big, huge bite out of your ass that you simply cannot afford. It's not even a matter of whether or not you feel safest with them or you prefer to do business with them. You just won't be able to afford to do business with them. And then it'll be a matter of, well, gosh, what cryptocurrencies can I use without these assholes? And personally, I don't see Lightning Network fulfilling that need. I do see the possibility of quote-unquote third-party custodial wallets popping up and being used by many entities, but I think that between the regulatory morass that already exists and we're not going to see the migration in the more developed nations. You might see it in Africa and maybe South America and some parts of Asia and whatnot, but like in Europe and in the US and in Canada, these people had their banking systems locked down for the last century, and Bitcoin is kind of an anathema to those entities and those interests. And so, of course, they're not allowing in any way that they can. They're blocking anybody who's trying to get into this space. But we're going to get into a little more on that. But yeah, so as far as I can tell, it seems like between Veriblock and other entities like it sucking up Blockspace and the intentional 1 megabyte block limit, I think most people are going to get extorted out of using Bitcoin in a proper cryptocurrency sense. You know, they'll be using it somewhat like a Swift or maybe their existing bank account or something, or some symbiont kind of relationship like that. You know, where they are actually more parasitic relationship, I should say. Anyway, that sounds appropriate for this next song. We're going to go ahead and throw back down into some music. Fear Factory, Slave Labor, here on Coin Metal. And that was Sepultura with The Hunt. And I think that was off Chaos AD. And the one problem with that song, and the only problem with it really, I love that song, is that I didn't pay attention to the fine print when I bought that album, and unfortunately it was an international copy, which meant that it was in Japanese or Chinese or some shit like that. Unfortunately illegible as far as I'm concerned, because I don't read Chinese or Japanese or whatever it is. My apologies. I'm not meaning to offend anybody there. I don't know how to read it. That's all there is to it. Sorry. Anyway, had to pick some meat out of my teeth here, huh? Wow, man. Anywho, I got this article here on Medium, and we've been talking about competitive use of Blockspace on the Bitcoin network, and how there seems to be a growing number of competitors for the Blockspace that's available. It's my belief that inevitably this will force people from being able to do regular on-chain transactions on their own to being dependent upon one or more third parties in order to conduct simple transactions on the Bitcoin network. Now, we've just talked about Veriblock and how their use of the Bitcoin blockchain is creating a significant amount of demand contrast with regard to the price of that block space. And according to most accounts, they're doing so unnecessarily, as there are already projects in existence that do the same exact thing, that do not require as many transactions as Veriblock's process does. Now, I just want to point out at this point that there have been several projects run on the Bitcoin blockchain that sucked up a bunch of block space. And they've been called spam and whatever, but the fact of the matter is it's just competitive use. But it does highlight the fact that the block size limit itself is a greater impediment than an advantage, as there are ebbs and flows in the block space's price, and it's contingent at least partially on the actual demand for it. But as I've said multiple times on the show, I expect that an increasing number of vendors and whatnot requiring the need for a bit of that block space in order to set up their payment channels is going to create a hell of a lot of competition for that block space, and thus cause the price to go quite high. And so this Lightning, being an intended means of relieving some of that issue with regard to the cost of the block space, nonetheless is still dependent upon on-chain transactions. And so when you consider the fact that the transactions to set up payment channels will not only be more expensive because of the relative price of Bitcoin to the US dollar at the time that you intend to do it, but will also probably be higher because there are other entities out there competing with you for the block space, the available block space. And so, again, that block size limit, it puts a major limitation on exactly how much transaction throughput the Bitcoin network can have. So anyway, here we go. This visualizing HTLCs and the Lightning Network's dirty little secret. This is by Peter R. Risen, and it's authored March 28th, 2019. So yes, penis. A lightning channel can be thought of as a string of beads stretched between two people. Referring to Figure 1, Alice can pay Bob by pushing one of her beads to his side. If Bob also has a lightning channel with Carol, Alice may pay Carol through Bob. She pushes one bead over to Bob, who then pushes a bead over to Carol. The fundamental rule, and the reason behind Lightning Network's liquidity problems, is that the beads can move from side to side, but cannot leave the string they're on. That's all you need to know to understand the way money can flow in the Lightning Network. But this model doesn't tell us anything about why Lightning payments are secure. For example, what is stopping Bob from simply keeping the bead Alice pushed towards him and never sending one on to Carol? The purpose of this article is to answer the question, quote, what makes Lightning payments trustless? I don't think they can be trustless because they're happening off-chain, but let's get back into it. At the end of the article, we'll reveal the Lightning Network's dirty little secret that small payments aren't actually trustless at all. Routing nodes can lose customer funds. Hash and time lock contracts, HTLCs. To explain what prevents Bob from keeping the bead from Alice without sending one on to Carol, we need to introduce, quote, locks to our physical analogy for lightning channels. Locks can be placed on the strings to constrain the movement of beads, only opened if specific conditions are met. The hash and time lock contracts, HTLCs, used in Lightning payments involve two types of locks. Figure 1, the hash lock, and Figure 2, the time lock. Let's see here. The hash and time lock contracts used in Lightning payments involve two types of locks. The first is a lock that opens if presented with the correct password. We'll call this the hash lock. The second is a lock that opens automatically after a time delay. We'll call this a time lock. Now let's return to the payment of one bead from Alice to Carol through Bob. To make the payment trustless, Alice, Bob, and Carol need to be online at the same time and participate in an elaborate ritual. First, Alice asks Carol to think up a secret password and tell her the password's hash. Let's pretend the password Carol thought up was boondoggle, and its hash was 45F8. Next, Alice places a hash lock between her and Bob set to open when presented with a password that hashes to 45F8. At this point in time, neither Alice nor Bob can open the lock because neither know the password. Alice then pushes a bead against the hash lock. Lastly, she places a time lock on the left side of the bead, set to automatically open after 48 hours. Figure 3. Bob sees that the bead is his if he can figure out the password before 48 hours is up. He also knows, because Alice told him, that Carol will reveal the password in exchange for one of his beads. To entice Carol into action, Bob places the same hash lock between himself and Carol, pushes over one of his beads, and then locks it in with another time lock. He knows that in order for Carol to open the hash lock and then take the bead, she'll need to enter the password in plain sight, which is the same password Bob needs to open the hash lock with Alice. Carol, upon seeing the bead is hers for the taking, enters boondoggle into the lock. in Bob's plain sight, remember. The lock's CPU confirms that hash boondoggle equals 45F8 and then opens. Carol moves the bead to her side of the string. With knowledge of Carol's password, Bob unlocks the bead from Alice in the same way. The payment is complete. You might wonder why Bob would bother to participate in this ritual in the first place. Had Carol not been cooperative, his bead may have been frozen until the time lock expired. In practice, Alice would send Bob a little more than what she asks Bob to send to Carol as a fee to compensate for this risk and for Bob's effort. When the payment is complete, Bob will have a bit more than he started with, thereby motivating him to complete the payment. You might also wonder what purpose the time lock serves. The time locks allow participants to recover their funds if the payment fails. For example, imagine that Bob becomes uncooperative after Alice shifts her bead over and adds the two locks. The time lock is what allows Alice to get her funds back. She just needs to wait for the time lock to expire. There's no way for Bob to steal the bead in the meantime because he needs the password from Carol, which he can't get without giving Carol one of his beads and thus completing the payment. Interested readers can explore what happens if one party becomes uncooperative at different steps in the Lightning payment process to convince themselves that neither Alice, Bob, nor Carol are at risk of losing money due to the action of their counterparties. The Lightning Network's dirty little secret. The Lightning Network has a dirty little secret few people know. To understand what the secret is and its ramifications for Lightning payments, we need to dig a bit deeper. Recall that when Alice sent the payment to Carol through Bob, the intermediate state shown in Figure 7 existed. When expressed as a Bitcoin transaction, the channel state contains three outputs: Alice's coins, Bob's coins, and the coin, quote, in flight. Here's the problem. If the value in flight is below the BTC dust threshold, then it cannot be represented as a third output in the channel state transaction. It is not possible to use hash and time locks to protect the payment if the payment is too small. To explain how the LN deals with this problem, I must first make a confession. It is not exactly true that the number of beads on the string is constant. There is actually a bucket beside each string labeled, quote, miner's fee that contains small fractions of beads. The value in this bucket gets claimed by the miner who confirms the channel state transaction, should the channel state be pushed to the blockchain. Fractions of the beads can move from the string to the bucket, or from the bucket back to the string, but only if the persons on both sides of the channel agree. Rather than locking the value in flight with hash time locks for small payments, Alice and Bob just moved the value in flight into the fee bucket. Figure 8. Bob trusts that Alice will cooperate with him to take the value in flight out of the bucket when he reveals Carol's secret password. But Bob then dumps the value in flight into a second fee bucket that he shares with Carol, promising to give it to her if she tells Bob the secret password. Carol tells Bob the secret, and Bob and Carol together move the payment from the fee bucket to Carol's side. Bob then goes back to Alice, tells her Carol's secret, and if all goes well, Alice cooperates with him to take the value in flight out of the fee bucket and place it on Bob's side of the string. Unlike the HTLC scheme described earlier, this scheme relies on trust. For example, Carol could reveal the password to Bob, who could then leave the payment in the fee bucket, yet still go to Alice and deliver the password in exchange for his payment. Carol's recourse in this scenario is limited. Either she does nothing and accepts the loss, or she closes her channel with Bob. But closing her channel with Bob doesn't make her whole, because the value she should have received gets sent to a miner instead. Despite how broken the above scheme sounds, it actually works reasonably well in practice. Bob has no real incentive not to give the money to Carol. If he doesn't give it back, he'll be no better off. The miner will keep the extra funds, not him, and probably worse off. Carol will likely close the channel, since Bob has proven himself untrustworthy. The damage Bob can do appears limited to the value of the payment plus the cost of establishing a new payment channel. Why this is significant? Lightning's dirty little secret is significant because it reveals how friction from Layer 1 leaks into Layer 2, forcing complex and poorly understood workarounds to the Level 2 protocol. The workaround in this case changed the timeless nature of Lightning payments. For payments above the dust threshold, neither Alice, Bob, nor Carol can lose money due to the actions of their counterparties. For payments below the dust threshold, Alice, Bob, and Carol can lose money through no fault of their own. It is a fundamentally different security model from what people understood. One might argue, quote, "We're just talking about tiny payments, so who cares?" I don't buy this argument for two reasons. Number one, Core's scaling plan of using the blockchain as a high-fee settlement layer will increase the threshold for what constitutes dust. Dust are outputs that cannot be economically spent because the on-chain fee to spend them is greater than their value. With $100 fees, most of the world's entire monthly wage is, quote, dust. 2. Losing several tiny payments in quick succession, ergo due to an LN routing attack, could result in a significant loss. This is also why custodians are required to be insured. Continuing on. Imagine a future where the majority of payments take place on the Lightning Network and the transaction fees on L1 are consistently over $100. Dust outputs below $100 on the main chain have no value because it costs more to spend them than they're worth. Now the Lightning Network has a problem where even $50 payments are not quote-unquote trustless. In the case where $50 is below the dust threshold, which would be a reasonable policy considering that $50 would be economically unspendable on L1, then HTLCs cannot be used to protect the $50 payment. Customers can lose $50 payments through no fault of their own. In the case where developers try to get around some legal quote loophole by setting the dust limit to $1 so that HTLCs can still be used, the effect is still a $50 loss to the customer because the output will not be economically spendable. Customers can still lose $50 payments through no fault of their own. One might argue, quote, well, okay, routing nodes can lose their customer funds, and those funds might be significant in a high-fee future, but routing nodes are peers, not businesses. I don't buy this either because the entire purpose of routing Lightning payments is to earn money in transaction fees in exchange for lending liquidity. Already today, the Lightning developers have abandoned the idea that all users would route payments. Now it's encouraged that normal users use non-advertised channels that never route. In a high-fee future, a hub has effectively custodial control over its users' money. A user cannot settle on the blockchain to recoup funds for payments not protected by HTLCs. Further, if the user's balance is on the same order of magnitude as the on-chain fees, the user who is also trapped by the hub. It is simply not worth escaping from a bad channel because doing so would cost the user their entire balance. Hubs can thus also lock customer funds indefinitely by refusing to route payments unless certain conditions are met, ergo, unwrapping the onion routing information for AML KYC purposes. The user's only choice is to settle on the blockchain and lose all of their money, which isn't a real choice at all. Hubs can also steal from their users in the form of exorbitant fees. Again, the user is trapped and has no choice but to pay if they want to access their money. Well-connected Lightning hubs in the future with high on-chain fees should be regulated, as they have effectively custodial control over their customer funds. I'd like to hypothesize that the following law exists. Yes, it does already. Payments on Layer 2 for amounts below what is economically feasible to carry out on Layer 1 cannot be made quote-unquote trustless. Lightning will only work as people expect if the underlying blockchain is unconstrained, meaning without a block size limit. More. This is just one of many reasons why a future where most transactions take place on the Lightning Network and the blockchain has high fees will be very different than people expect. Other reasons include, number 1, Lightning scales transactions, not users. The cost to run a full validating node will still be high. Number 2, friction on Layer 1 affects fungibility on Layer 2. Coins have position-dependent value. 3. Liquidity. Most, quote, wealth states are not reachable via Lightning transactions. Payment failures are unavoidable. 4. Routing is hard if the network graph is large. Lightning hubs will centralize to reduce routing and liquidity problems. 4. The typical user experience of running a non-custodial wallet will always suck. Users need to be online to receive money, hire watchtowers to monitor for channel fraud, subscribe to source routing services to send payments, and dynamically back up their channel states against data corruption. Let's see, that was 5. 6. Systemic risk. A very large amount of coins need to be locked in Lightning channels, hot wallets, to provide the needed liquidity. 7. Aggregate miner fees on Layer 1 will not be sufficient to secure the blockchain when the block reward runs out. Footnotes. For example, this is some of the response that I've also gotten when I've raised these same exact concerns a million times over a million different mediums, and you can find them if you look. Footnotes, and this is a example given. For example, I have been called a liar and received harsh feedback on Twitter and Reddit, even by people working on LN, for pointing out that LN is not quote-unquote trustless for small payments, and the customer funds could be rerouted to the miners through no fault of the customer. The widely held but false belief within the BTC community was that all Lightning payments were, quote, trustless by design. I don't understand how anybody could have that perception of Lightning payments, in all honesty. Let's see here. Let's check the comments on here. Gumboot says the scenario described constitutes a large and obvious attack surface on BTC for any actor with ability to influence fee levels on L1 and interfere with payments on L2. Having skewed the incentive for actors in Bitcoin, LM will now enable attacks on people's money when the value in the network is large enough. That's absolutely correct. Let's see here. Somebody gives a more balanced explanation, supposedly, and we might actually get into it. But yeah, I've made these points multiple times concerning Lightning and how it would function at quote unquote scale. And none of the bigger concerns I have were even addressed in this. And it's because my bigger concerns are like an order up from here. Like, so imagine we get into a future where you're locked into your Lightning Network payment channel by your payment provider, right? Or your funds are locked up with them and you're only allowed to spend with people that they say you can spend with, right? Because they're your custodian. They are the ones that will decide whether or not your transaction actually gets involved or included in their payment channel to be cleared. You know, they could bump it. They could mark it some way and bump it. But the bigger concern I have is this, that they'll lock up value in these payment channels, and then they'll say, okay, well, you see this 300,000 Bitcoin we have in this payment channel, or 200 Bitcoin or whatever that we have in this payment channel. We're going to issue a token to cover that, to represent it, and we're going to issue those tokens out in its stead. Now, of course, they'll be just like a bearer bond. You'll be able to give them back to us and get the Bitcoin for the equivalent value. But the fact of the matter is that behind the scenes, they'll be on fractional reserves. And you won't have any idea because you have no linkage between the commerce that you're doing, no visible linkage anyway, between the commerce you're doing with those tokens and the actual Bitcoin blockchain itself, because you're using an abstraction of value that is not transacted on the that transactions are not counted on the Bitcoin blockchain. They're counted by your third-party service provider, and so they are what they say they are, not what you say they are. And this is the greater danger that I keep trying to tell you guys. And, to varying success, I'm sure it gets through. I know it does get through because a lot of the people that argue against me the hardest, they end up blocking me. Because what I'm saying is either too offensive to their sensibilities, or it gives away the fucking con that they're trying to take advantage of. One of the two. I'll let you decide exactly which one it is. The FinCEN was very, very clear, and as a matter of fact, if you go back to my YouTube channel and you look up FinCEN, you'll find one of my earliest recorded episodes and it concerns exactly that. FinCEN's first coffin nail, the deal to Bitcoin, and the fact of the matter is that at that time, I knew that they would have to change Bitcoin radically in order to get the definitions that they were giving for custodians and money transmitters to be applicable to Bitcoin payments. And this is exactly the kind of thing that they would need to do to Bitcoin payment processing in order for the legislation and the wording to apply to Bitcoin payments. Now, the funny thing is that it'll only affect the off-chain transactions. It won't affect on-chain transactions. And so you can still participate with cryptocurrencies that do proof of work and do on-chain transactions. And so when you contrast the issues that this article and other concerns that I brought up versus a small cap altcoin, you notice immediately that the whole concept of using off-chain transactions loses all of its value, because all of a sudden you're taking Bitcoin and using it in the same fashion that you use your US dollars or any other fiat currency digitally from your bank. You've just put somebody else, probably your bank, like one of your bank's sock puppets, your bank actually owns them. And so, in other words, you've not changed the relationship between you and your money services providers. You do that by using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies on chain. You replace them with a network of volunteers, a global network of volunteers. And so why you would give that up to give back over to Visa and Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo is beyond my fucking... I don't understand. I don't understand why you would. And more importantly, I don't understand how it will possibly cancel out the use of alts. As a matter of fact, I believe that problems experienced in Bitcoin and with Bitcoin will cause a further adoption of alts. Which, by all accounts, most altcoins should not even exist. Would not even exist if Bitcoin had enough block space to do what it's supposed to do. For everybody that can involve themselves in it. You've probably heard it mentioned, at least in this article and the previous one to it, how Lightning Network and other services like it changed the incentive dynamic behind using Bitcoin and even mining Bitcoin. Because, all of a sudden you're going to be mining for Visa. Do you really want to mine for Visa? Probably not. And so the appeal of supporting the transaction activity that's going on the Bitcoin network goes down. This reduces the value of Bitcoin. And while Bitcoin may currently be experiencing a little bit of a spark of increased use, I believe in the longer term, you get up there $5,000-$6,000 a Bitcoin, and we're going to be talking about some significant on-chain fees, and people are going to sober up really quick, about using a Raspberry for fucking layer 2 transactions. They're going to understand the con job that they've been fed for the last 4 years. I find it really embarrassing, honestly. Especially if anybody who's actually read the Bitcoin white paper has a live node running right now. Because if you've read the white paper and you understood the white paper, you can probably be capable of understanding exactly why currencies that operate according to how the white paper describes will always be superior to ones that require third parties. And if you aren't aware of it already, you will be made aware of it in the near future. You can rest assured on that one. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And I haven't played any Metalocalypse tonight. I feel the need. So here it is. Awaken. Here on Coin Metal. And I was going to let it run right there. That was Pantera Walk. But we are coming to the close of this one. So I wanted to go ahead and break it off, close it off, cut it down. You know what I mean. But anyway, man, if you aren't looking at that Bitcoin chart today, that was some... has been and probably will still be some record-setting movement for... it broke 5,000 on Bittrex today, so who's to say? It looks like it's coming back up too. So it may not be done running up for the day. My goodness. Seen a lot of guys really, really happy on crypto Twitter about now, having fulfilled their longs and whatnot, but I gotta feel bad for the guys that have been shorting today. Bitlord posted something, and it was a GIF of all these liquidated shorts that I guess Whale Watch or something like that is picking up. It's kind of funny, really. I used to hear all the time that you really shouldn't short Bitcoin, even if you have the opportunity. Well, I think a lot of people learned that lesson today. It's trading, kids. You're gonna win some days, you're gonna lose others, but stick to your guns, stick with your values, and if you're having that much trouble in trading like I am, you definitely want to defer to a little additional knowledge, man. There's all kinds of videos up online telling you how to read the markets and get a better idea for exactly when to be putting in your entry and making your exit with your profits. So, it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. We will be back again on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. As far as our last dance is concerned, I haven't played any 6th today. But I'm like having a little trouble figuring out exactly which song would be the best. And because, some people are riding high, and these guys are kind of, I don't know. Let's go for Philosophy's Last Dance here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and you all have an excellent evening.